Why is everyone you know falling apart? Look around. Your coworker just had a panic attack in the bathroom. Your sister hasn't slept more than 5 hours a night in 2 years. Your friend canceled dinner again because they're too exhausted to leave the house. And when you ask how they're doing, they all say the same thing. Busy. So busy. Like it's an achievement. Like collapsing under the weight of their own schedule is something to be proud of. We've turned exhaustion into currency. Burnout into a resume bullet point. We compete over who has it worse, who works longer, who sacrifices more. And somewhere along the way, we forgot to ask the most obvious question: who decided this was normal? Because it wasn't always like this. Human beings didn't evolve to live like this. Your great-grandparents didn't brag about being tired. They worked hard, sure, but work ended. There was a line between labor and life. That line has been erased. Not by accident, not by progress, but by design. By people who figured out that exhausted humans are profitable humans. That if you keep someone busy enough, they won't have time to realize they're being robbed. This is the story of how we got here. How busyness became a virtue. How rest became a sin. And how an entire system was built on the lie that if you're not perpetually exhausted, you're not doing it right. The trap starts the moment you wake up. Before your eyes are fully open, you're reaching for your phone. Messages, emails, calendar notifications reminding you of the 17 things you need to do today. Your morning routine isn't about peace or preparation. It's about optimization. Cold shower for discipline. Protein shake for efficiency. Podcast at double speed while you're getting dressed, because God forbid you waste 7 minutes not consuming information. You're productive before you've even left the house, and you're already tired. You get to work, and the performance begins. Everyone's performing busyness, performing importance. You walk past cubicles, and everyone's hunched over their keyboards like they're defusing bombs. Faces tight, jaws clenched. Someone microwaves lunch at their desk because leaving for 30 minutes would look bad. Another person is on their third coffee by 10 a.m., eyes red, hands shaking slightly. Nobody talks about how they feel. They talk about what they're doing. Projects, deadlines, meetings, an endless stream of tasks that somehow multiply the more you complete them. And here's the thing. Half of it is theater. Studies show that the average office worker is actually productive for about 3 hours a day. 3 hours. The rest is filler. Pointless meetings, emails that could have been texts, busy work designed to look like real work. But you can't admit that. You can't say out loud that most of what you do doesn't matter, because then they'd question why they're paying you, so you stay late. You keep your laptop open. You send emails at 9 p.m. to prove you're still grinding. It's not about the work. It's about the appearance of work. The performance of productivity. Your boss walks by and asks how it's going, and you say, "You're slammed, buried, drowning," and they nod approvingly, like you just told them you ran a marathon. "Good," they say. "That's what I like to hear." Because in their mind, busy means valuable. Empty calendar means expendable. They don't see that you're dying inside. They don't care. They just need the machine to keep running, and you're a part in the machine, and parts don't get to be tired. You leave work and you're not done. You take it home. You take it to bed. You dream about spreadsheets. You wake up at 3 a.m. thinking about a presentation. Your phone buzzes during dinner and you check it. You check it while your kid is talking to you. You check it while you're supposed to be relaxing, because relaxing feels wrong now, feels wasteful. There's always something else you should be doing. Some way you should be improving. Some skill you should be learning. The self-help industrial complex has convinced you that rest is laziness and laziness is death. This is what they wanted. This exact state, where you can't sit still, where stillness feels like failure, where your worth as a human being is measured entirely by your output. But it wasn't always this way. Go back to the early 1900s. Before that, for most of human history, work was tied to survival. You hunted, you farmed, you built shelter, and when those needs were met, you stopped. You gathered around fires, you told stories, you sang songs, you rested because rest was part of the rhythm, sunrise to sunset. Seasons for planting and seasons for harvest, and seasons for doing absolutely nothing. Time moved differently. There was no such thing as being busy all the time, because busy all the time would kill you. Your body would give out. Your mind would break. So you didn't do it. Then came industrialization, factories, assembly lines, the sound of machines that never stopped. Suddenly, work wasn't about the sun or the seasons. It was about the clock. You worked when the factory opened. You stopped when the whistle blew. 12 hours, 14 hours, sometimes 16. Men, women, children, all crammed into buildings with no windows, breathing toxic air, repeating the same motion thousands of times until their hands bled and their backs bent and their spirits hollowed out. This was progress. This was civilization. Workers started organizing, fighting back, strikes, protests, people dying in the streets, demanding something revolutionary, the right to rest, the right to a life outside the factory, and slowly, over decades of bloodshed and struggle, they won. 8-hour workdays, weekends, holidays. It wasn't given, it was taken. By force, by solidarity, by people who decided that a human being was worth more than their labor. But the owners didn't give up. They just changed tactics. Henry Ford figured it out in 1926. He cut the work week to 40 hours and everyone celebrated. The workers thought they'd won. But Ford wasn't being generous. He was being smart. He realized something crucial. If workers had more free time, they'd spend more money. They'd buy cars, his cars. They'd buy radios and refrigerators and washing machines. They'd become consumers. Rest wasn't a gift. It was a strategy. Keep them working just enough to earn. Give them just enough time off to spend. Turn the working class into the buying class. Trap them in a cycle where they labored to consume and consume to justify the labor. It worked. The economy exploded. The American dream was born. Work hard, buy a house, raise a family, retire in comfort. The promise was simple. Sacrifice now, relax later. Just keep your head down. Just keep pushing. Just keep believing that someday, if you're good enough and work hard enough, you'll finally be able to rest. But someday never came, because the system wasn't designed for you to reach it. By the 1950s, a new kind of worker emerged. The organization man. White collar, suburban. A man who wore a suit to an office instead of overalls to a factory. And with this new class came a new kind of control. Not through physical chains, but through identity. Your job wasn't just what you did, it was who you were. People stopped asking what you believed or what you loved. They asked what you did for a living, and your answer determined your value. William White documented this shift in his book, The Organization Man, published in 1956. He described a culture where loyalty to the company was the highest virtue, where working late proved dedication, where taking vacation was suspicious, where your entire sense of self became fused with your employer. You weren't a person with a job. You were your job. And if you lost your job, you lost yourself. This was insidious, because it made exploitation invisible. The factory owner with a whip was obvious. Everyone could see the violence. But the corporation that demanded your soul, that was subtle. That was sold as opportunity, as prestige. You weren't being exploited. You were building a career. You weren't being broken. You were being professional. And it spread like a disease through every industry, every class, every person who wanted to be taken seriously. You proved your worth through suffering, through sacrifice, through giving everything to the company and calling it commitment. Executives bragged about sleeping in their offices, about missing their kids' birthdays, about skipping funerals to close deals, and everyone nodded and said, "Now that's dedication." The 1980s made it worse. Reagan, Thatcher, the gospel of the free market. Unions were destroyed. Regulations were gutted. Corporations got meaner. They called it efficiency. But efficiency just meant squeezing more work out of fewer people. Layoffs and downsizing and restructuring. The social contract was shredded. Your grandfather worked at the same company for 40 years and got a pension. You'll work at 5 companies in 10 years and pray you don't get fired before you can find the next one. Job security became a joke. You couldn't just do your job anymore. You had to prove your value every single day. You had to make yourself indispensable, and the only way to do that was to be available. Always, at all hours, nights, weekends, holidays. The boundary between work and life evaporated, and we called it flexibility. Then the internet arrived. Email, cell phones, laptops. The promise was freedom, work from anywhere, stay connected. But freedom became a prison. Your boss could email you at midnight and expect a response. Clients demanded instant replies. The office stopped being a place and became a state of mind you carried everywhere. In your pocket, in your bag, in your skull. A low hum of anxiety that never quite goes away. And here's where it gets truly diabolical. We started doing it to ourselves. We didn't need managers breathing down our necks anymore because we built the manager into our own heads. We set goals. We tracked metrics. We optimized our routines. We turned our lives into projects and our time into resources and ourselves into products. The self-help industry exploded. Books and podcasts and courses all teaching the same thing: how to be more productive, how to wake up earlier, how to do more with less, how to hack your biology and gamify your existence and squeeze every drop of value out of every minute. Rise and grind, hustle harder, sleep when you're dead. The mantras of a generation that mistook exhaustion for excellence. And then came the gig economy, the final nail. Uber and Lyft and DoorDash and Fiverr and TaskRabbit. Everyone became a freelancer. Everyone became their own brand. You weren't working for a company anymore. You were a company of one, monetizing your skills, hustling for contracts, building your network, your worth determined by your rating, your survival dependent on your availability. No benefits, no stability, no safety net, just you, alone, competing against everyone else who's also alone, all of you fighting for scraps while the platforms that connect you make billions. And they told you this was empowerment. They called you an entrepreneur, a go-getter, a self-starter, when really you were just desperate. So you worked more. You said yes to everything. You drove for Uber after your day job. You sold crafts on Etsy on weekends. You rented out your apartment on Airbnb while you slept on your friend's couch. You turned every hobby into a side hustle and every skill into a revenue stream and every moment into an opportunity to earn because earning was the only way to survive. And you were tired. God, you were tired. Bone tired. Soul tired. But you couldn't stop. Because stopping meant falling behind, and falling behind meant losing. And losing meant, what? Homelessness? Starvation? Death? The fear was never quite clear, but it was always there, a vague dread hovering over everything. So you kept moving. We all kept moving, and we posted about it. We made content about our exhaustion. We tweeted jokes about insomnia. We shared memes about coffee addiction. We turned our suffering into engagement and our burnout into brand and our collapse into content. We performed our pain for an audience that was also performing their pain, and everyone clapped for everyone else, and nobody stopped to ask why we were all dying. Because we were dying. Are dying. The statistics don't lie. Suicide rates climbing, depression everywhere, anxiety disorders through the roof, heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune conditions, bodies shutting down under chronic stress, people in their 30s with the cortisol levels of soldiers in combat. We're not living, we're surviving, barely, and we're calling it life. But let me tell you who's not tired. The people at the top, the billionaires, the executives, the shareholders. They're doing fine, better than fine. They're thriving. While you're working yourself to death, they're getting richer. While you're skipping meals and losing sleep and canceling plans, they're buying yachts and private islands and rockets to space. In 1965, the average CEO made 20 times what their workers made. By 2019, that ratio was 278 to 1. 278 times. Not because they work 278 times harder, not because they're 278 times smarter, but because the system is designed to funnel wealth upward. Your exhaustion is their profit. Your busyness is their dividend. Every hour you work creates value, and most of that value flows to someone who isn't you. They need you busy. They need you exhausted. Because tired people don't ask questions. Tired people don't organize. Tired people don't revolt. They just survive, day after day, paycheck to paycheck. Too drained to imagine something different, too burnt out to fight back. And they've convinced you it's your fault. That if you're struggling, it's because you're not working hard enough, not hustling hard enough, not optimizing hard enough. They took a system designed to exploit you and sold it back to you as self-improvement. They took your exhaustion and rebranded it as ambition. They took your suffering and called it success. You see it everywhere. Instagram entrepreneurs preaching the gospel of 4 a.m. wake-ups. LinkedIn influencers celebrating people who work through cancer. Motivational speakers telling you to outwork your competition. Self-help books with titles like Extreme Ownership and Crushing It and No Excuses. A whole industry built on the idea that rest is weakness, and weakness is failure, and failure is unacceptable. But here's what they don't tell you. Rest is not a luxury. Rest is biology. Your body is not a machine. You can't just run it harder and expect it to keep going. Chronic stress destroys you. It wrecks your immune system. It increases your risk of heart disease, stroke, diabetes, depression. It literally shortens your life. Every hour you spend in that hyperactive, always-on state is an hour you're borrowing from your future, and the bill comes due. Your great-grandparents knew this. They worked hard, but they also sat on porches. They gathered for Sunday dinners. They had time to think, to talk, to exist without justifying their existence through labor. Somewhere along the way, we lost that. We forgot how to just be. We turned into human doings instead of human beings. When was the last time you did nothing? Actually nothing. No phone, no TV, no book, no productive task. Just sitting. Just breathing. Just existing in space without purpose or goal or optimization. Can you even remember? Most people can't. The idea terrifies them, because we've been programmed to believe that empty time is wasted time, that if you're not producing, you're failing. But that's the lie. That's the trap. The greatest ideas in history didn't come from grinding. They came from rest, from space, from boredom. Newton discovered gravity while sitting under a tree doing nothing. Archimedes had his breakthrough in a bath. Einstein spent hours staring at clouds. Your brain needs downtime. It needs space to wander, to connect dots, to process information. When you're constantly busy, you're in survival mode. You're reacting, not creating. You're checking boxes, not thinking deeply. The French have a word for this: flâneur, the art of wandering, of strolling through life without purpose or productivity, just observing, just being. It's not laziness. It's a different kind of intelligence. One our culture has forgotten. So how do you escape? First, you wake up. You see the game for what it is. Busyness is not a virtue. Exhaustion is not proof of value. You've been lied to. You've been exploited. And the first step to freedom is admitting it. Second, you reclaim your time. Not someday. Not when things calm down. Now, because things will never calm down unless you force them to. You set boundaries. You say no. You turn off notifications. You protect your evenings and weekends like they're sacred because they are. This will be uncomfortable. People won't like it. Your boss will push back. You'll feel guilty. But guilt is just the programming. It's the trap trying to pull you back. Third, you redefine success, not as accumulation but as sufficiency, not as achievement but as well-being. You ask yourself what actually matters: time with people you love, health, peace, experiences, joy. None of these require you to work yourself to death. They require the opposite. There's an old story about a businessman who visits a small fishing village. He sees a fisherman lounging on the beach in the middle of the day and asks why he's not working. The fisherman says he already caught enough fish. The businessman says, but you could catch more. Buy a bigger boat. Hire workers. Build a fleet. Make millions. And then what? The fisherman asks. Then you could retire and relax on the beach, the businessman says. The fisherman smiles and says, what do you think I'm doing right now? You don't have to wait for permission to live. You don't have to earn rest. You don't have to justify your existence through endless labor. You can choose differently. You can step off the treadmill. You can build a life that doesn't require you to be perpetually exhausted to feel worthy. But it takes courage. It takes you doing something radical in a world that demands conformity. It takes you trusting that your worth is not tied to your productivity, that you are enough even when you're doing nothing. The trap is real. The exhaustion is real. But so is your power to choose. You can keep grinding until there's nothing left, or you can stop. You can rest. You can reclaim your humanity. The question is, will you?